there are a few components for this installation, and I'll go through them. Back here is the physical cross member that will be attached on to the transmission and transfer case and support those up and actually support half the engine weight as well, because the engine connects to that shaft right there. There is also the transmission mount plate, which would be attached directly to the transmission with these 4 bolts right here. And you'll use these 4 bolts right here, which are 3/8 by 3/4 long coarse thread. And there is a lock washer and a washer, which will be threaded through these 4 holes. There's also the rubber mounts that will go on top of this cross member, and this is for vibrations and stuff like that. And on these studs, there are just fine thread 3/8 nuts and lock washers on all 4. This right here is a large bolt that will connect to the transfer case, and it'll go into this hole right here. And there's also a rubber mount on this one, but on top I put a 1/2-inch washer so it doesn't crush the rubber. There is also a 1/2-inch fine thread nut, lock washer, and just a normal washer. There's also this large rubber insulator right here, and it is also called a snubber, and it will be installed onto the cross member, onto this large circular hole right here, and it will just push right on. But make sure you watch my other video on how you remove this ring that can be on these cross members, and it can cause lots of grief with installing this new snubber. Now we need to install the transfer case mount insulators, and first we have to install this large insulator right here, and this mount will go on this big circular hole right here, and it'll just push in like this, and I would just use a rubber mallet here and just to pound it in. And it's as simple as that, and have it so the metal ring is going inwards to the cross member and the rubber is pointing out. And now this bolt right here will feed through this hole and be part of the transfer case mount insulator. First thing we have to do is mount the transmission mounting plate onto the transmission with these 4 holes right here, and you'll use these 4 bolts as well. It's also very important that we position the transmission mount plate in the correct position. So with this longer flat piece, as you can see, we go towards the bell housing, and when it dips down right here, it dips down because these are actually at 2 different levels. So with the bigger flat piece facing towards the bell housing, you place it on like that, line up the holes, and the mount plate is properly installed. Each bolt has a washer and a lock washer, and they just thread in to all 4 holes. Make sure to torque all these 4 bolts as per manual specs, and it's between 38 and 42 foot-pounds, and I have the torque wrench set to 40 foot-pounds and torque them in a star-like pattern so it puts even pressure on the plate to the transmission. It is important that we install this rubber mount on the correct direction. As you see, there is a bit of an angle to one of these sides, but these little indents are made to fit these bolts that face towards the bell housing or towards the engine, and it just slides right on to the transmission mount plate like that. And now you just have to thread on the nut, and don't forget to put the lock washer on. It is important that we get the transmission and transfer case mount in the right orientation. So you want to have it so the large rubber mount insulator for the transfer case is positioned towards the transfer case, which will feed into this large hole on the transfer case. But you also want to make sure that we have it lined up so it'll feed through the two holes on the cross member here for the transfer case mount insulator, which is right here on the very top. So now we'll flip it over in the right orientation here with the snubber towards the transfer case, and it just flips on like this, and it feeds through the two top holes and positions like that. Here is a closer view of the transmission and transfer case cross member in its right location and fed through the right holes on the cross member. As you can see in the top, it is fed through those two holes on the cross member with the transmission mount insulator going right through, and then over here is the transfer case mount, and there will be a bolt that will be fed in through the top right here and then down, and then it'll be threaded with a nut on the bottom. As you can see, there's a hole that will feed right through. As you can see, our cross member has about 20 holes in it, and it's seen some good life in it, and it's been around for a long time. So you might have to use a washer just because these holes might be a little bit rounded out and bigger than they're supposed to be. But sometimes it's better to use your old stuff because the new reproductions are not as good as the old sometimes. So with your washer, lock washer, and fine thread 3/8 knot, thread on. Here's a closer view of the transfer case mount location. And I would just make sure you have the other screws hand tight because you have to somehow feed this thing through now. And it's a bolt, slide on a big washer, big fender washer I'd use, the rubber mount insulator, and this will feed through the top, which might be a little bit wiggling around here. And you can see it poked through the bottom right there. Now put on your 1/2-inch washer, lock washer, and nut. And all the locations have been secured. Now it's time to properly torque the bolts. Now we have to torque all the bolts. So torque the transmission mount insulator between 15 and 25 foot-pounds, as you don't want to tighten these nuts too much and squish the rubber too much, and then it'll lose its strength. Finally, tighten this nut until the lock washer is fully compressed, and that will be tight enough because you don't want to squish this rubber too much. And now the cross member is mounted to the transmission and transfer case, and it now can be installed into the Jeep. And won't that be an exciting day? Thanks for watching, and subscribe.
That's it. Subscribe.